Okay, so typically when I'm looking at putting together a drawing, I've got these shoes here, and I'm going to do a contour line drawing, and I'm going to kind of arrange my shoes so that they are sort of in front of one another to help create some sort of space. And so if I'm looking at this, you can see how, like, let's see, from say your point of view, this is in front of this. And it gives us a little bit more of a sense of space and depth. So anyway, that's kind of what we're going to be working on today. So you'll probably want to arrange your shoes sort of in a similar manner, I would guess. So to start with, once you get your arrangement kind of figured out, you're going to want to start with just a contour line drawing. And so I was gonna work on this already, but I decided that it might be worth it to sort of show you how I would do this. And so if you feel like fast forwarding it, you totally can. But it takes me a little bit to figure this out. So anyway, you probably want to start with a pencil that is a little bit on the lighter side. So this is a 2B. This is kind of what I wanted to start with. And you're just going to start your drawing by doing some contour line pieces. And you can think about these as like a whole shape, but most of the time I sort of think about, especially when I'm drawing kind of a strange object that isn't, I don't know, like a ball or a square or something, a more organic looking object like a shoe, I tend to sort of do shapes sort of in sections. And so I'm going to do the strap here first. And I'm also going to look at the negative space. So when I'm looking at this, I can see there's this open space. So the positive space is the sort of like your object, and the negative space is the air around it. So when I look at this shoe, I can see that there is where the strap is. I have a really strong sense of negative space right in here. So there's where the back of my shoe heel is. There's this space right in here. Can you see that right there? That's a pretty interesting shape. And you can kind of look at that. If you think about, like, I'm also drawing the shape of the air, you can start to find some pretty interesting relationships between your objects. So besides just looking at the shoe, say, you also want to look at your negative space. So if I know this is here, then I'm going to draw the back heel in here. And you want to keep your lights or your lines pretty light, because it'll just work out better for you in the end if you do it this way. So you don't want to make it too dark yet, but you do want to make it so that you can see it. Okay. Now I'm sort of doing the caterpillar line to start with, because I know that I'm going to go back in and change these a little bit. You kind of want to avoid your caterpillar line if you can. You want more of a confident looking line, but I'm going to go back in and make these look more specific later, so it doesn't matter too much at this point. So I'm going to look at the relationship between, say, where this strap is and like how far down how far is this space between the strap and the front of my shoe here. Now you may have picked a different type of shoe, which is totally fine. I just happened to pick these because I kind of like that they've got kind of a strap. Now I'm going to do the front of the shoe here. And this is just sort of one big shape. And I want to think about the relationships between things. So if I know that this is the width of the strap, and then I'm guessing this is sort of the width of the footbed sort of space here, right? Then I'm going to think about the space that the front of this shoe is. And like, how far out do I think it goes? So you can kind of sketch that. I have these kind of pointed shoes. And you want to check, like, for some of your angles and that sort of thing. But the fun thing about drawing a shoe is that the shoe doesn't think it looks bad. It's always going to look like a shoe of some sort, even if it's really flat, which is something I like about drawing inanimate objects. Okay, and then I have like the interior there. And then I've got my, you can kind of see that, kind of my heel is sort of before the strap, and it kind of goes. Now the heel is going to be back behind this part here, so I know that, like, because it's sort of at an angle, that the heel is going to be back here as opposed to like pull it all the way here, because it's not, we're not looking at it just from the side, we're looking at it at a 3/4 angle. So I can kind of also look at the angles between, say, the back of my shoe here and the kind of the curve of the footbed here. So if I'm just sketching that out, that's not very hard. And I can also think about the negative space in between these spaces. So in here, that kind of makes a triangular shape. And so I'm also looking at that. Okay, so I got my first shoe kind of in. And now I'm going to put in my second shoe. Now my second shoe is behind this one, and so I know that that it's going to be, I'm going to pull this up a little bit, sort of behind here. So that means that this shape, the front part of this shoe shape, needs to go in front of the next shape. So if I look at this, I can see there's a little bit of a this really nice negative space that's happening in here between my two objects, and I can kind of think about how far is this space to my other object, and it is about that far, I guess. And then kind of what is this angle? And I'm going to kind of look at this here. The interior of this footbed of this shoe sort of goes behind this shape, and I'm looking at how this sort of goes around, and the front of the shoe is arranged. So I know that I know that the front of this shoe, between here and where the other shoe is, there's this nice negative space in between here, and I'm going to pull this out a little ways. So I know that this shoe is kind of coming forward. It's a little bit what you would call foreshortened, but the top of it is a little bit higher on the page than my front of this shoe is. So I'm going to do that. Okay. I can also see that the negative space of, like, in between where the shoe top hits, like this space in here is a little bit bigger than I think it is, actually. So I'm going to work in there a little bit more. Don't forget, you can always go back and erase if you need to, or you can make arrangements. See, obviously I'm not getting it right on the first go, and you probably won't either. Most of the time I don't. It's not really a big competition or anything. It's just figuring out how things go. I'm going to do that. Okay. Now I noticed that when I look at my shoe, the strap here and the strap that is over here start in about the same space. They're like pretty much across from one another. So that means that I'm going to draw this strap up. And I know that this shoe is going to be slightly higher than this shoe strap over here, just because it's a little bit further back. So I know that about this thing going on here. So you'll see from here to here, there's like a line that goes, it's not straight, see, it goes sort of like that. So you can see that out in your space too if you look at it and you go, okay, well this shoe has it's higher in the space than it is this one here. Okay, so I'm also going to look at the negative space here, and I'm going to draw in my heel. I know the back of my heel kind of comes up like 3/4 of the way high up here on this strap here. So I'm looking at the kind of the relationships between these spaces. And this is going to be higher up on this page than this one is, actually. Okay, that's looking pretty good. All right, and then the back of this shoe is going to come around here, and I can see quite a lot of it. So I'm going to draw in that space there. And I can also see, yeah, that's looking pretty good. I can see my heel too. So my heel also is quite a bit higher than this heel. So if I'm comparing them, it comes up a lot. So from here to, it's about halfway up my, the bed of this foot here. So that's about where my heel's gonna go to. And I can also see that this is, I can see the side of my heel a little bit and the back a lot. So I'm going to put that in there. Actually, this comes up a little bit more. Now I'm getting a little bit heavy-handed, so I need to be really careful about not making it too dark, because then it's really hard to erase it. And so I don't want to have to do that. I'm going to make this heel a little bit thinner. And I'm going to make these match. Because I can totally see also see the front side of this heel here. There, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now I've got kind of a general contour line drawing of my shoe. So now this is the fun part, is I'm going to start thinking about what modifications I want to make. And so I'm going to take maybe another, I'm going to make this just a little bit higher. Pull this up a little bit. I'm noticing that I have a couple spaces that are sort of weird, so I'm going to give this a little bit more height before we move on. Okay. And the same way with this one here. I'm going to make this a little bit taller.